Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, the inspiration for the song Thos is Nice, Isn't It? From Stephen Sondheim's Saturday Night. At least, that's what I tell myself. Well, it's the best time of the year because the Edinburgh Festival Fringe is on. It's bursting with life and bursting with shows. And I hope you're as excited about it as I am. Of course, the best way of experiencing the Fringe is to go there and to see some of the shows. If you've not been, do try and dip your toe in the water and see if you like it. If you like musical talk, I'm sure you will. But of course, not everyone can make it to Scotland. But you can experience the Fringe at one remove by listening to our Musical Talk extensive coverage. And so extensive was it last year that we've still got one final episode to talk about a show that you could have seen at last year's Festival Fringe. But, in case that seems incredibly old news, we've kept it till last deliberately, because you can also see it at this year's Festival Fringe. Such was its success, it's come back. It's called Prom Kween, and it's spelt slightly unusually, Kween. And there is a reason for that, which we'll hear about in a minute. So, what does the Edinburgh Festival Fringe catalogue, which you can find both online and in paper copies here and there, say about Prom Kween for 2018? Well, here's the blurb. Following a sellout 2017 Fringe, 9 5-star reviews and 2 awards, the Queens are back and they're bringing glitter. From the producers of Margaret Thatcher, Queen of Soho and How to Win Against History, Prom Kween is a coming-of-age satire for those who were that age years ago. A musical for any kid who took their glasses off and still didn't feel pretty, who questioned what it meant to be beautiful. It's the story of falling in love with who you are. Think Grease meets Drag Race meets a Trump rally with sequins. Well, I hope that's whetted your appetite. It was certainly a most unusual show. When I saw it last year, it had the most tremendous atmosphere. The audience were really up for it, and that can really help sell a show. And it didn't hurt at all that the show had something to say, and knew how to say it in a witty way. And, as Mary Poppins once observed, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Which is not to say that the message is a difficult one, it certainly isn't, it's very contemporary. But it is one of those issues that society is currently wrestling with. But let us remember, theatre isn't just for entertainment, it is to help us see society as it is and how it could be. That is something that's always been true of theatre, and that is exemplified in this show. But I don't want you to go away thinking it's preachy, it certainly isn't. It's basically fun, fun, fun. But instead of me talking about it, let's hear from its creator. Because we're now going to broadcast the interview I had with Rebecca Humphries, who wrote, directed and indeed appeared in Prom Kween. Musical Talk.
So my name's Rebecca Humphries and I wrote, directed and am in the show Prom Kween.
Now, Prom Kween, let's start with the spelling.
Yes, that's right.
So if people want to find it, they'll need to know how to spell it.
That's right, yes, absolutely. So Prom Kween is spelt, well, prom's spelt normally, and then Queen is spelt Kween. And that's because, well, for 2 reasons. It was originally just called Prom Kween, but there's another musical.
In the traditional
in the traditional sense, there's another musical called Prom Kween. So in the end, we decided to use the Queen that is being used in pop culture at the moment,
yes,
which I think is quite reflective of the show as well, and also is... I mean, it attracts the right people, to be honest, to come and see it. Like people who get it are just going to get the show, and so that's what we ended up doing.
It is a hook, and I mean it's just that that non-traditional spelling of Queen allows a non-traditional audience to understand what's going on.
Exactly.
Quite entirely. And thank you for flattering me, because I was in the audience yesterday and telling me that I'm clever to have been there. By the way, I agree.
Very clever.
But it's a great show. Do you want to very quickly give us a thumbnail sketch of the plot?
Yes,
from which
absolutely.
We can hang most of our conversation, I suspect.
Absolutely. So last year I found this story on Facebook on one of the pop-ups about the first ever non-binary kid to become prom queen in America. And as soon as I've been looking to write a musical for some time with my musical writing partner. And I saw this article and I just thought, that's exactly right for now. It's relevant, it's topical, it's evocative of all of those high school musicals and all of those sort of pop culture references that I knew we could cram in. So the story follows Matthew, who is the first ever non-binary kid to be crowned prom queen.
And non-binary, I think we just need to do a little bit of definitional here, because it's
Absolutely.
a touch of cutting edge. We're talking non-heteronormative for a start, aren't we?
We are, yes. It's gender fluid.
Yes.
So it's a person who doesn't identify as being male or female necessarily. Not trans, not drag. It's just someone who doesn't really identify with either sex, and so as such, especially when you're a teenager, doesn't quite know themselves necessarily at this moment.
It's not quite gay either, is it? Although
No.
I would say there's a very strong gay sensibility.
Within the show?
Yes.
Yes, there absolutely is. I mean, what we try and do in the show is celebrate the LGBTQI culture, which isn't...
In its broadest sense, I noticed there.
That's right, yes,
quite right
yeah.
too.
Well, in the sense that what we didn't want the show to be was an LGBTQI show.
Yeah.
We didn't want to attract an audience that necessarily was completely au fait with that community. We wanted to make sure that the musical was a musical that stood on its own 2 feet.
Yes.
And the fact
All
that
comers are welcome.
Exactly.
And you can take that any way you like.
Yes, quite, yeah. But we wanted to maybe attract people that wouldn't have necessarily seen the show had they known that the protagonist was from that community.
Yeah.
And so people would come, and they have come and enjoyed the show, and perhaps also have gone away now knowing what non-binary means, or, you know, what that entails.
Or hearing it for the first time.
Exactly.
It is still a very new term.
It is a very new term, yeah. And what we've hoped to do with the show, I mean, I'm not from that community, but what I've hoped to do with the show is sort of, educate's the wrong word because that sounds a bit like I'm being preachy, but actually
open
it up to people that wouldn't necessarily be au fait with it.
Yeah. You're a friend of the community.
That's right. I like to think so anyway. I hope so.
Well, in musical theatre terms, it's not about a community to be courting, if I may say. It goes with the territory, to be honest.
Yeah, quite.
So let's talk about the gestation period, because you are the writer. Mm-hmm. You do have a writing partner.
I do.
But tell me, how did it come to be? So you saw this story last year, but there's a world of difference between seeing an interesting news story and thinking, I'm going to put on a show. Was it always aimed at Edinburgh, by the way, or was it just a show that could be toured? Or
It was always aimed at Edinburgh. I love the Fringe, and I'm really passionate about new writing at the Fringe, and actually new musical
theatre. You're the best
theatre.
kind of person, because so am I. You see, reflected glory.
Very
like
good.
That.
They're my favourites.
Yes.
But I am especially keen on new musical theatre at the Fringe, and actually I did a show in 2014 here that was a musical comedy, so it was stand-up and just me and Joe, who wrote the music for the show. We did a show about Disney, and it really landed, and it went great here. And it goes back to what we were saying about the Queen and the KW. I've got a slight head for Edinburgh marketing, if I do say so myself. and so that went so well, and we won an award for it, a musical comedy award for it. And ever since then, we've been hoping to emulate that success, or actually that sort of passion for a project. And we've had ideas for musicals, and we've had sort of thoughts that the pair of us have independently considered, but nothing has really landed. And it was only last year when we saw this article that we thought, actually, that feels like the right time and the right project. And you know, I'm an actress. I'm not just a writer and let's say just. That's a humongous, fantastic job in its own right.
This is a wide portfolio you're offering me here.
That's right, yeah. I'm an actress that doesn't do musical theatre. I do very serious, very dark plays most of the time, and Jo is also, she's part of the band for an American in Paris in the West End at the moment. So she's got a full-time job, you know, and I was working at the Royal Shakespeare Company earlier on this year, and so our paths rarely cross, and we rarely have time together. So we knew that we had to write something that felt immediate, and that felt like it was a news story that we had to get out in a very short space of time. So having a deadline of the Edinburgh Fringe the following year worked out fantastically for us.
There's nothing like an approaching deadline to get one to knuckle down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can't work unless I've got a deadline, to be honest. I mean, as a self-employed person, things just sort of fly off into the ether unless you're locked down into something. And having the Vault Festival earlier on this year, which is where we did our rehearsal and development process there.
Some workshopping.
That's right, yes, but for the public. And then having Edinburgh after that was the best thing that could have happened, really, because here we are, and it got made, and it's going well, and that's that, really.
Well, it looks to me to be a sellout. It certainly was last night when I went to see it.
It has been a sellout, yes, yeah.
What more can one hope for at the Edinburgh Fringe?
Well, quite exactly, yeah. We were very lucky, and our audiences have been really up for it, and they've just been fantastic, actually.
So let's talk then about the creative writing process within the parameters of the timescales. It's interesting that you were heading towards the Vault Festival, so you knew that, but also the fact that the two of you have careers in your own right. How do you write? I don't mean it's the age-old question, is it lyrics or songs or anything like that? I think things have all moved on rather from there. It's not Gilbert and Sullivan anymore, but you don't even need to be in the room anymore. You can do everything without even physically meeting. So how is your favoured way of working with your creative partner, Joe?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Actually, it turns out that I'm quite old-fashioned in that sense, because we always are together. I write the lyrics and the melody sort of on my own. I can't write lyrics without knowing exactly how the tune's going to fit, and I tend to get earworms, so I'll know how a tune goes. Yeah, exactly. So I will write a song in lyrical terms, and then Jo will come and we'll get together, and she will underscore it and write this amazing music that supports it. And
sets your ideas in a way.
Yes, absolutely, and she's a great person to have, because I'm not, believe it or not, a very musical person, and no, not at all. Like I love musical theatre, and it's hugely influential on me when I was growing up. But I wouldn't know a crotchet from a minim.
So you're talking technically.
Technically, yes,
because obviously you've got an ear for being able to create a melody.
Yes,
it's just
I have.
Not, well, fine, forgive me, Lionel Bart and Irving Berlin were pretty much musically illiterate in the sense of being able to write this stuff down.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm in good company then.
Oh, tremendously. I mean, Irving Berlin had a piano where it had a gear stick on it so that he could go from major to minor. He couldn't actually play on the different coloured notes. And Lionel Bart used to record melodies on a dictaphone and then send it off to his arranger, who would then set and write and notate and do all the work.
Well, actually, in which case, it's not unlike us. I'll be walking around with my iPhone, and then suddenly I'll just go da 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 da, which ended up being I Deserve to Be Prom Kween, which was the first one. And suddenly I would realise sort of how it all worked, and I knew where a key change should be, but I wouldn't exactly know what that sounded like. But it's just and the thing about Prom Kween as well is that actually, I mean, you've seen it, but for anyone who hasn't, it's a parody musical, and it's a trope. Everyone in it is a trope character, apart from the non-binary character, who is much closer to us, which is deliberate. It's not defining someone who is part of the LGBTQI community as different or special in any way.
It's the everyman character, actually, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's the point. But also, the plot of the musicals and the order of the songs within the musical is also a trope. It starts with a big production number. The sort of slow finding yourself moment is in exactly the right place, and the you can't stop the beat hairspray is deliberately there, and all of them are. They all follow a certain arc. So actually, that was quite freeing and liberating in a way. We knew exactly what kind of song had to happen where, and we just followed that. And for the people who are big musical theatre fans, it's a sort of it's a treat for them, because they kind of know what to expect next.
The profile of the score is a familiar, well-travelled road.
Exactly, and deliberately so. And we sort of celebrate that and enjoy the tongue-in-cheek parody aspect of that.
So, I mean, it's interesting you used the word sort of parody and pastiche. Well, here's a question, if you're following the tropes of a musical and you're writing new music, how far are you from being actually writing an original musical rather than a pastiche of an original musical?
Good question. I think that what we've tried to do is inject the musical with enough of its own personality to get away from just having written a pastiche and a parody. And also, we love this musical. Like, we love High School Musicals, and I love coming of age movies, and so it's more an homage, I suppose, as opposed to like a total parody. And also, we wanted to write a musical that had a protagonist at its core that perhaps would be overlooked in a traditional musical theatre, or indeed a High School movie sense. A lot of High School movies, for example, will have a gay or a lesbian character, but as the best friend, or like someone who will tag along and be in a few token scenes or something like that. But we wanted to go, no, this they're not gay or lesbian, but this LGBTQI community character is now the protagonist, and that's fine. And it's not anything that we particularly flag up in any sense. It's just that just so happens to be there. And I think by doing that, we've gone, this is a parody, but what we're doing is actually highlighting something at the same time.
You are quite right about the gay character having a subsidiary role, should we say. I think that's the broadest. I'm using gay as a broad shorthand here for not we, in the broadest societal sense, if that could be described to us. But let's go back to the daddy of the High School musicals, which is High School Musical, obviously.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
let's face it, it does what it says on the tin.
Exactly.
And there's Ryan and Sharpay, and so the gay character is, if you actually, is an adjunct to the villain of the piece in a strange sense. So you're right, and it's comic relief. Let's be brutal.
Yes,
so often the ways, and that isn't the case here.
No.
With our central character.
No, deliberately. In fact, the comic relief comes from all of the huge stereotypes of other parts, and that's also very deliberate, as I think slightly touched on before. But every character in it is a stereotype. There's the bitchy mean girl.
That's Lexi.
That's Lexi, who's
beautiful but unpleasant.
Yeah, quite.
And
yes,
she's played by you.
That's right.
You
yes,
are beautiful, but you are pleasant. So
thank you very much.
I imagine. But,
I'm awful.
No, don't say that.
But so Lexi is a stereotype of what it is to be a teenage girl growing up with all of those cultural influences at the moment, which
and
we
social pressures, in fairness,
yes, exactly, which we reference during the show. There's Binky, who is the typical best friend, who's a sort of geek character, nerdy character at the school.
I think of her as sort of Marcy from Peanuts, Peppermint Patty's sort of best mate kind
she
of thing.
is like that.
Yeah.
That's right. And then we've got the American dad, but he's just dumb. It's not an angry character. It's just someone who's really influenced by all of this stuff that's happening in America at the moment. He's our sort of political
It's unthinking,
edge.
I think, is what you're suggesting.
Unthinking.
And
so all of these characters...
he does have a journey in his own way.
He
or
does.
At least, or a surprise is revealed, at least.
Yes,
so,
yeah. I mean, that's just sort of the fun of theatre, really.
Although there's a lovely then fourth wall-breaking moment that acknowledges the surprise. So
yes,
it's a joke upon a joke, which is all very clever, I think. Yeah.
And then finally, there's Trey, who is the sort of just jock, who doesn't really have anything to say for himself, but
when he does, he's not allowed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all those characters are huge stereotypes, and then Matthew, who is the protagonist, is much more rooted in reality, let's say.
And yet, and this is a very interesting technique, I think, there's our central character, Matthew, is played by every member of the cast. I mean, there's an identifying sort of beanie woolen hat.
That's right. I've been doing it for so long, I completely forget that that's not normal.
No, that is not normal, but it's actually a very lovely device. Fun enough, at one level, it also underscores the everyman aspect of the character.
That was the intention.
Oh, well, in which case, well done me for spotting
it.
Yeah,
no, really. Yeah. It's really lovely when someone actually identifies with that. It's very... very relaxing.
And across the board as well, because he's played by male actors and female actors.
Yes.
And different heights and different builds, and everything is there, but they are playing a consistent character around which all the other characters are rotating and revolving as well. I've seen it done. I mean, the first time I ever saw that done, it's been a few years now, was in Travels with My Aunt, the adaptation of the Graham Greene story.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I think it's the original production still gets revived every now and then. I think that may be 25, 30 years old now. Yeah. But that was the first time I saw the idea of a cast doing lots and lots of different characters, one character being played by the same person, and then all the others revolving around it.
I see.
It wasn't being done for that purpose there. It was being done for stage fluidity, I think, would be the best way of describing that. This has a slightly different function and role, as you say. It's also to underscore the everyman aspect. I keep using that term, but it's the best one I can think of. So I like that very much. Did that, however, present... You've obviously got very comfortable with it because you've now sort of forgotten.
Yeah,
but
not every other musical does it.
But was that difficult in the directing element of it?
Do you know, the truth of that decision to have 4 people playing it, I mean, it ended up being really rather fantastic because obviously having Matthew being played by... It doesn't make sense for a non-binary character to be played by a man or a woman. And then there are 5 of us in the cast, and only one of us, the actor who plays RuPaul, is the narrator, and so that's the only person that doesn't multi-role within the show.
Partly because the costume change would be too difficult, I imagine, let alone anything else.
Despite having a fantastic costume change within it.
There is one, but that's so beautiful because it comes unexpectedly.
Yes, quite. But the 4 actors playing Matthew was a big accident. What happened at the Vault Festival was that we had Sam, who plays Trey and is also one of the Matthews, was originally playing Matthew.
Just Matthew?
Just Matthew.
Oh.
And I had another actor playing Trey. And when it got to towards the Vault Festival, we didn't get our funding that we wanted. They just said no, and they actually kept us hanging on for quite a long time.
So you couldn't make alternative arrangements?
So we couldn't make any arrangements, and someone had said, it's financially impossible for me to do this, unfortunately. And it's like, well, fair enough. I mean, I say fair enough now. I had a slight breakdown at the time, thinking, what am I going to do? And then I went back to the script and realised that actually there was always one spare person in every scene. And suddenly it all clicked, and I thought, you know what, it is supposed to be this everyman character. It doesn't make any sense, as I say, to have a man or a woman playing this role. We'll all play it. And actually, it was more a logistics thing as opposed to a directing thing. It was just me deciding. It was, and then suddenly you get songs like "Feel the Fear," which is Matthew's song, and it's being sung by 4 people, and it is deliberate that we're all different shapes and sizes, and that we all look very different, and that we're all, very different people as well as actors.
People,
yes, exactly. So that hopefully, highlights that the role of that character within the show. And as I say, in the script it's very clear, like Lucy now plays Matthew in this scene, Danny's now playing Matthew, Sam is I am. And so it was more a logistical thing, but actually, the passing of the hats it's become quite a lovely theatrical device, because I was a bit surprised at first, because I thought, people won't get on board with this as a musical. People with musicals are used to, hi-fi stuff, and for us to literally pass a beanie hat to each other and go, now you are playing Matthew, and you're picking up the relay baton, as it were. People love it, because they just get on board and they go, oh, that person's playing Matthew, and they're very accepting of that, and whether we're a boy or a girl or whatever,
you can project almost as well, which is another way of getting a proper engagement with an audience. The audience can make that character, to a degree, what their image of what the character is.
That's exactly
because
right.
It's not set in stone, as it isn't in Speech Marks real life, and it isn't on stage because of the different
and
actors and actresses.
That works both ways. Some people have really, really embraced it, and other people have found it a bit more difficult to get on board with. We've had a couple of reviews come in actually that have said that Matthew doesn't really have a character, and it's like, actually they've sort of missed the point in a way, which is that we've all got huge mad characters, and Matthew is more closely related to what's personal about us, the actor.
Speech Marks the real person?
Yes.
I'm using he here, but
yes.
But he's the real person. He's also the one who's, how do I put this, Speech Marks most sincere.
Absolutely right.
There is an element of heightened performance in the other characters. I mean, Lexi is almost too, with no disrespect, you play her splendidly in a heightened way.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, quite.
Well, that's the point, and also having us, I said to them when we were playing Matthew, I said, when you approach Matthew, just bring it as close to you as you're comfortable with, and that you're comfortable with doing. And they're all fantastic actors. We all trained together. So
did you?
yes, we did. It's complete
symbiosis.
Sorry.
There is a symbiosis.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I said to them, make sure that it's as close to you as that space would allow, really. But the fact that we also then play these heightened characters allows those changes to ring.
Yes.
I think much clearer than if we'd just been playing our own role or we had a bigger cast.
So let's talk about Lexi, as you're in the room. The funny thing is, I mean, she has a sense of entitlement. Because she thinks she's going to be Prom Kween automatically, because any contender seems to give up before even the nomination closing date is in.
Because they all love her and they think she's fantastic.
And of course she is physically beautiful, that's made very plain. And I say again that you managed to carry it off perfectly.
Thank you very much.
But when suddenly there is a challenger, an unexpected challenger, you do, I mean, forgive me, I'm understanding it, it's a heightened character, but actually you do see a fight within her, at least briefly. I mean, it's not a fight that lasts long, but you see that she actually states overtly that she doesn't want to attack him personally for, it shouldn't be an abusive contest, ad hominem attacks. And then, of course, she immediately gets into the ad hominem attacks in the worst and nastiest and most vicious way possible, and it ultimately becomes homophobic and intolerant and all the things that the play is about, in fact. There's sort of latent, I'm using homophobia once again as a broad term. I actually don't know what the wider term is, I'm afraid, but I shall use that as a shorthand, so I hope people will forgive me. But there's if you like, the passive homophobia of the father, who just unthinkingly And he sees a poster of RuPaul on the wall and says, and you think there's going to be a moment of you're anticipating a moment of anger or recognition. I mean, he just thinks it's a very beautiful
woman, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And comments.
He thinks it's Beyonce, actually.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll go to show what I know. But yes, it's... oh, that's right, sorry. He thinks it's Beyonce, doesn't he? Yes. It was RuPaul.
Yes.
I should know that. And then there's the overt, which is Lexi. She turns to it as a weapon.
Yeah.
One doesn't actually know if she believes it or not, but for her it's about achieving her aim, which is, this has got to be me, it cannot be anyone else.
Yeah.
There's some, I mean, it's a journey to the dark side, but there's a journey there for her. It's, how easy are you finding it to embody someone who's awfully rotten?
What we wanted to do...
Or rather succumbs to their own corruption, maybe it might be.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Well, what I wanted to do, really, was... What was most ultimately fun in the musical. And I thought, you know what, it's very easy to write a character that has suddenly... do you know what, I'm going to refer to another piece of work, which is a show called An Octoroon, which is at the Orange Tree Theatre recently.
Well, I know what an octoroon is, but I haven't heard the term spoken for a very long time.
Yeah, it's a play. There's a play called by Brandon Jacob Jenkins, which is at the Orange Tree recently, and it's fantastic play. And within it, the protagonist is a black man who's putting on a play, and he says the problem is that it's impossible to get a white person to be in a play about slaves without them having a monologue about their inner life and why they're so horrible to black people.
Yeah.
It's impossible to get people to do that. And I thought what would be really fantastic is to have a villain role that doesn't have to justify why she's so horrible. The funniest thing about it could be if she was just horrible.
Yeah.
And it would be very, very easy to then write, something about how she's affected by society or whatever. But I just thought it's just much more fun to have someone that's just hateful and sort of fabulous within it.
Oh, yes.
Because that's not really the point of a High School Musical for some, and also you can do that in a much cleverer way. During her song you hear the influences on her life and you think actually, she's just a girl who is incredibly entitled.
Yes.
That probably would act this way towards anyone regardless of
even gender. Yeah, I mean
a contender.
Yeah.
She doesn't like being contended, and that's what's so exciting and fun about playing this character, because actually she's not really got any redeeming qualities other than the fact that she's really beautiful. And it's like, actually she doesn't really have any problems, and she does other than the fact that she's so prejudiced. And what's nice is for the audience to step out of that world and go, oh, isn't she terrible? But everyone in the show to go, she's fantastic. And then at the end she gets a comeuppance and it's all very exciting and everyone cheers and it's good fun.
Yeah, there's one character we've not really mentioned except obliquely.
Who's that?
And I don't know the name of the actor, but it's the RuPaul character.
Yes, his name's Will Donaldson.
Perfect. Who has great stage presence, which is also important because, as you quite rightly said, he's the only performer on stage who stays in their character.
That's right.
Which is sort of, as you quite rightly pointed out, the embodiment of RuPaul.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, playing a kind of fairy godmother stroke narrator.
That's right.
I don't mean fairy godmother in a panto sense, just someone who's looking down, observing. And
a mentor.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it, yes. Someone to look up to.
Yeah.
Who can show the path is there, I suppose, is the role there. But of course that character, beautifully portrayed, as you say, with a very nice... there's two costume changes, because she does briefly play... it's funny, I automatically see people who identify as drag queens and go for the she option, but there we are.
Yeah.
But she plays the Statue of Liberty.
Yes, that's right.
That is a costume change. She's got a torch. She's got that crown thing.
We always rather love the fact that it's just still RuPaul, but with a torch and the crown, which is rather fun. And also, RuPaul plays the principal at the school, but it's just a pair of glasses, which we always rather enjoy as well. The fact that it's just
and
RuPaul.
the sequin dress. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, but that character, and it's interesting because I think that character also gives the piece a very particular flavour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the moment you have a drag queen, so I'm using these terms broadly, but the moment you have a drag queen character, you get a drag sensibility, and there's a very distinct drag sensibility. And funny enough, just from my own experiences this summer here in Edinburgh, I've seen two very distinct shows. where you might have thought you get a drag sensibility and where you might not expect to get a drag sensibility. So I'll just lay my stall out a little bit here. I saw the Dame Dolly Donut show, and the concept is that Pantomime Dame takes herself out of Pantoland and tells you her life story in a slightly broader context.
Oh, wow.
But of course, pantomime dames aren't actually drag acts. They are men dressed as women, but they don't have that sass. They're ultimately sympathetic characters in a very broadened, heightened emotional way.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, you think there's an obvious parallel, but there isn't. And then another show I saw, which absolutely was rhythm with a drag sensibility but had no drag in it, was called Do's, which is a piece, it's basically a chap and two women who are an inept pop group who are trying out 12 different songs to become the Irish entry for the Eurovision Song Contest, but they don't realise they're rubbish. But actually, it's cleverer than that, because it's all very deconstructionist. So, for example, they all come on with their lipstick smeared up their faces at the opening number. So the ineptitude, there's holes in the sequin clothing, is never commented on. So it's done deliberately to sort of twist and surprise you. But the chap who's the leader of the group, he's called Anthony. Haven't changed his name from Anthony. Plays it like a drag queen. I don't know the actor for Adam, but if he hasn't done some kind of drag in his past, I should be very surprised. So the room doesn't have any drag in it, but has that drag sensibility. And I was getting both these different flavours, and I'm merely mentioning them as other shows are up here at the same time.
No, it's a big theme this year.
It is indeed. Yeah, there's plenty of. I'll use cross-dressing as the broadest, as a factual interpretation.
Yes, yeah.
But there is this drag sensibility that you feel that you could. Well, I think the room has that sense of being in the back of a bar kind of thing, because it is a black box space.
Yep.
It's not really a theatre in the sense of you wouldn't other times of the year I suspect use it as such. There are pillars which here and there which make a couple of the sight lines interesting. But
which have been slightly problematic. But it is very deliberate that we're in that space as well, which is the back of a bar.
Well, it does have that feel. I mean, everything about it is right. And so, but she, the drag queen character, I'm going to go for the word sass. Yeah. I'm afraid that's the best I can come up with, I think. But there is a healthy ladleful of sass in the piece, which I think also underscores the gay plus sensibility of the whole thing. When did you decide that character needed to be in it? Because that, at one level, you could take the character out. You have a poorer piece. It's a really juicy, excellent addition. It's a succulent date in a very lovely fig pudding. He said, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it took a while though, didn't it? You can see. Anyway, how did that character come to be an integral part?
So when I began to put down the plot points for the musical, it was about this time last year. And I adore RuPaul. I just think that she's amazing. And I read an interview.
And sort of transitional as well, I should say, because in the sense that everyone knows her name.
Absolutely. And that has a lot to do with it. So when I was writing this plot for the musical, I just thought to myself, and it'll be narrated by RuPaul. It's just how I did it. And then when
Check
I started
the availability.
Yeah, quite. and the budget.
Oh yes.
But when I started telling people about it, they just thought it was hilarious. Yeah. And then it sort of occurred to me that actually, you know what, RuPaul is such a humongous pop culture reference at the moment. And as you say, everyone knows who RuPaul is. And that's, we sort of wanted to make it, as I say, accessible to everyone. And so the fact that RuPaul is now an emerging voice and face of popular culture, regardless of whether you watch RuPaul's Drag Race or you're a part of the community or whatever, everyone just knows who she is now. And so it was a way of being inclusive and open to everyone once again. And also, what RuPaul stands for in the show is there's one moment where RuPaul is actually, the character of RuPaul is part of the action on stage and not just narrating it and not merely being at one with the audience. And that's, Matthew, it's revealed, has a poster of RuPaul in their room. And so we just wanted to have RuPaul, I suppose, as an idol of someone perhaps who is part of the community, or non-binary or gay or transitional or whatever. And so we just wanted to have someone who really represented a voice in that community that says it's okay to be you and to be different.
And has been accepted on those terms already.
Absolutely. And I read the most fantastic article from RuPaul Out of Drag that was incredibly inspiring. And now I think it was on vulture.com. That was one of the longest interviews I've ever read in my life. You know, it just scrolled on and on, but each one was just fantastic. And I'll use he because RuPaul was out of drag at the time, was unafraid to really challenge the questions that were being asked and to say, actually, that's inappropriate, and was really at one with who they were as a person in and out of drag, and it was a very inspirational article for me as a straight person.
Yes.
And I just thought, actually, it's a love letter, really. It is, and a huge respect to that person, and saying, you know, you really encompass what it is to feel different, whether you're gay or straight or whatever. So that's why RuPaul's in.
You raise, or obliquely, you've made me think of another point, which is that, of course, there is a different cultural difference going on here, which is the fact that, forgive me, I'm assuming you're British.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, the accent suggests it. And this, I mean, in fact, there could be nothing more American almost than a high school prom queen contest.
Absolutely.
Proms are still, they do now exist in this country for school.
But that is as a result of an American influence,
Yeah.
which you know will always seep into this country. We're always slightly behind what they're sort of pioneering in a
My
way.
generation is school discos, you know,
Yeah,
standing in the
and
corner.
me.
Yeah, salt and vinegar crisps in the corner, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Boys
while
one side, girls the other.
Whilst the teachers play the music. I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah,
their
that's right.
secret collections. But so it's still not a natural part of British culture.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is a very heightened version of it. And of course, we've seen them in every film.
Absolutely.
And, you know, as you say, it's a creeping in Americanism. I don't make a judgment on that, but it's not naturally British culturally. How then do you, as a British person, address what is, let us not forget, an adaptation of a real story, a broad adaptation, but an adaptation of a real story? How far is authenticity important here, or is it actually you're sketching in a kind of cartoonish version of it in order to allow the characters to be heightened? Because it is the emotional journeys and character drama which is the thing that's really important.
Yes.
Also, it seems to me.
It's absolutely got no basis in reality whatsoever.
Apart from the fact that they have Prom Kween contests.
Yes, exactly. That's as far as it goes. And I mean, it's basically everything that I have ever learned growing up watching Mean Girls, Clueless, Grease, you know, all of these huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Very good.
Thank you.
It's
just drop a musical theatre reference in
lovely.
occasionally.
I love it. There's some really lovely moments within the show. I mean, I once sat and went through the script and wrote down every single direct influence that goes into the script, and there are actually lines that I have directly nicked from Grease, and there are lines that I have stolen from Clueless, and lots of other things that are they're just peppering the script, and sometimes you'll just hear someone laughing or cheering at the back of the room. They just know. There's a line before RuPaul comes in as Teen Angel in Beauty School Dropout, basically, who and Matthew says, "Oh, if only I had a guardian angel to tell me what to do." You know, like Debbie Reynolds had in Tammy, which is Frenchie's line that happens, you know, in Greece, and suddenly you'll just hear like a little pocket of people just going at the back of the room, which is rather fun, you know. And I've done the same thing in terms of the plot and in terms of the characters, and they're just nicked,
it's a
lovingly nicked. Yes, it's very lovely. Yes, a mosaic.
Yes, an homage as well. Yes, I think we can work together on this. I think.
I think so.
I love the idea that if you were to publish your script, it might have footnotes.
That's exactly what I would do. Yeah, that's exactly what I would choose to do, and I think that's part of the fun of the show as well. You know, it's part of the collective experience of it, that people suddenly get to these little treats and these vignettes. And the same thing with people who watch RuPaul's Drag Race. You know, there's lots of references to RuPaul, and not everyone gets it, but it's designed to still be inclusive despite that, and not to alienate anyone that doesn't. In fact, Danny, who plays the dad character in the show, read the script and loved it, and just thought they were funny lines, and had no idea that actually a lot of them were from Drag Race, and he just thought it was fun.
Because they are. But doesn't that tell you that the humour is not necessarily about the context?
Absolutely.
It is actually arising from various contexts.
Yeah.
That is funny in its own right. So.
Which is why actually that RuPaul's Drag Race, for example, has become so popular, because actually it's just funny, and it's just universal actually, and people who wouldn't necessarily watch that show would probably still enjoy it, but are put off by the fact that it's It's about drag queens.
What
you know.
they think they know it's about.
Yes, absolutely. Which goes back to why we have promoted and chosen to target our marketing towards musical theatre and not towards drag queens or non-binary people.
Well, yes. I mean, let us be honest. At the end of the day, I'm going to quote again from another musical, Curtains in this case. Show business is a business.
Yes.
And actually, you want to be as accessible as possible in order not just for the benefit of getting bums on seats, to use the horrible phrase, but actually to get it out there, to get the message out there, to have walk up and broad connection with it.
Yes.
Which is the dream of every creative person, surely. Unless you're deliberately taking yourself into a niche for different purposes, but
yes, and or if you've got an agenda in that sense. But I mean, and they tend to be, you know, quite exclusive agendas and actually alienate people. But I'm someone who's always believed that theatre, you know, I've done a lot of theatre, and some of it has been quite niche and sometimes quite preachy, and sometimes the message or the agenda is actually pushed onto an audience and it can alienate people. And I'm someone who's of the opinion that theatre should be completely inclusive, and that's why, you know, we've created a theatre piece quite deliberately that breaks the fourth wall, that allows people to come in and they're all singing before it starts. We have karaoke on.
You do at the beginning.
That's
yes,
right,
absolutely.
and if people whoop and if people want to be involved, then we absolutely encourage that. And we're gonna face, you know, a bit of theatre snobbery because of that, you know, and we already have done actually.
Really?
Yeah, people, you know, they're not quite sure how to take it, and we've had a couple of people, you know, sort of snidely saying that it isn't theatre, or that we, you know, or that we don't quite.
They mean it's not their slice of theatre, but theatre's a very broad church.
It is, yeah. Or that we don't carry it off. We don't. Oh, it's not slick enough, or that we don't manage to carry it off in a good enough sense. And we're like, oh, you just didn't get it. It's as simple as that. Like.
So I'm interrupting you there, but this is one of those things that drives me insane. These are people, I'm guessing, who mistake seriousness for humourlessness.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the show is far from being earnest, but that does not in any way mean that it doesn't have a message of some worth.
I completely agree. And for me, to tackle an issue that is rife, like the polarisation of America at the moment, which is what actually is an underlying theme within the show, the best way to do that is for me, is through comedy. And satire, and that's for me the way that I become most engaged with politics. You only have to look at people like Tina Fey at the moment, who is doing their viral video where she eats the sheet cake about the neo-Nazi rallies in America at the minute, and I mean that's something that has really united people, and that has, you know, has made people just so embrace actually what's going on there at the moment and tackle it in a different way.
Well, comedy's a great leveller, isn't it, as well?
It's a great leveller, absolutely. And I would never pertain to be doing anything like that amazing woman is doing, but you've just got to take those influences and go, actually, this is the best way for me to tell this story. And if I was watching it, would I engage with it and would I enjoy it? Yes, I would. And so that's great. That said, I mean, I have just sort of laid into the theatre goers that haven't embraced it. What I've been most excited and surprised about is some of the reviewers that actually, I know most of the reviewers in the theatre scene, because I am, as I say, an actress, and
you're in the biz.
I'm in the biz, yeah, quite. And so these reviewers have been reviewing me for the last 6 years on the London stage, but it surprised me the sort of opinion and slight prejudice I have had towards them, and expectation of what their opinion will be, and then they come and they love it. And actually that's a lot about me and about how I view them, or how I believe them to be humourless, for example, some of the time. And it's really been quite heartwarming for people theatre reviewers to come and enjoy the fourth wall being broken, and enjoy being allowed to laugh and whoop, and it's just been really lovely.
Yes, I mean, the play, I think, because I still think of musical theatre as merely drama with music. I mean,
yeah,
it is
I do
essentially
too.
It's not different. And there's various prejudices about jazz hands and all, but, you know, musical theatre is as broad as theatre is.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And I consider it to be the same thing. It just, once again, it's a different variant. But I sometimes is different to Gilbert and Sullivan, which is entirely different to
Prom Kween.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. But it's a broad church, and I love all three.
Yes.
I mean, you know, there's room for all three. Funny enough, just taking that bit about reviewers, I was always surprised that reviewers from certain newspapers, which have a very particular line on X, Y, or Z politically or socially or whatever it is, not always to my taste, let's be honest, very often have completely independent views, utterly different from their newspaper. I often find theatrical reviews appear to be written for a totally different section of the population who I wouldn't have thought would be reading that newspaper. I'm saying no names, I'm giving no pack drill, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, you'll feel free to edit this out in the end, but we had one reviewer come, and I was nervous because it's a very liberal show, I think it's fair to say.
Oh, yes, I think so.
And it was a certain publication that is now edited by, let's say, an ex-minister, and they gave it 5 stars.
Yeah.
Which I just thought, well, that's fantastic, actually, and amazing. And yeah, you're right, it does go to show that the people who review aren't necessarily,
buying the party line, as it were. Yeah,
absolutely.
I do like the objectivity. Actually, still, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean reviewers, I speak as one, are always right, because it is still just one person's opinion.
Yes, and quite, yeah.
But anyway, there we are. That's an interesting discussion, perhaps for another day. But can we put our toes in the water on that?
Yeah, me
so
too.
The audience response has been very, very positive
Yes.
for the most part. There's always going to be walkout or people who don't like it, but that's true of every single show.
Absolutely, and I know that from my career as an actor as well.
And just sitting in an audience, you see people get up and go at different times.
Yeah.
Although in Edinburgh, sometimes they come back with a pint, I've noticed. That's the other thing. So.
Yeah. That's happened to us, certainly on more than one occasion. Well, we don't really actually get very many walkouts because I think that the audience is so on board from the beginning that I feel as though if someone tried to walk out, that they might get lynched in a way.
You're going to walk out in the first few minutes rather than halfway through the show, aren't you? Because it shows its colours very early.
Very early on, very deliberately.
So, what next for Prom Kween?
The truth is, we're not quite sure yet. I mean, we hope to go back to London. I mean,
where unnamed newspapers are giving it 5 stars.
Yes, quite. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we would love to develop it further. We don't feel like it's over yet.
No.
For it, and I didn't really feel that way. I mean, it was always meant for the Fringe, and we are very lucky, and I feel very, very honoured that we won an award for best ensemble in the stage.
Oh, very good. Well done.
Which is very exciting. And that was sort of a validation that actually having 5 people in the show scrambling around, and a shared hat and scrambling around for props, and sometimes we can't quite get our costumes on and stuff, and it's just all part of the fun. And so developing it will actually be interesting because we'll have to find a way to develop it that doesn't actually involve getting more people in or a chorus or huge dance numbers or something.
Or staying within your core values, actually, because it's those core values which have carried you so far.
Exactly. But what we would like for the show is to develop it with a band now, which is something that Joe in particular as a musical director and as an orchestrator as well and conductor would really like to do. And so we're hoping that will be the next stage of our development, and fingers crossed it will, because I think that will really, that's the only thing I can think of that will really, I think, elevate the show to something that people will enjoy even more.
And how can people stay in contact with you and indeed Joe? Is there a website or for the show or for you as writers?
Actually, we don't have a website at the moment. I suppose social media is the way now.
Are you on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook, Rebecca Humphries, and Prom Kween is also on Facebook. It's Twitter that's really our main medium, and we're at Queen the Musical, so that's Queen with a KW, as we've mentioned before, at Queen the Musical, and Joe is at Joe Chikonska.
Do you want to spell that surname?
I would like to, yes. Joe is JOCICHONSKA. I'm doing it with my
spelling it.
You're spelling
with your
it.
Fingers,
just making sure that I've got it right. Yeah. So that's Joe, and then I'm at Bex Humps.
Give that again.
At Bex Humps, BECKSHUMPS. It's Rebecca Humphries.
Yeah. But on Twitter, you've got to keep it short, haven't you?
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I bet you get some unusual responses to that. But
yes, quite. I do.
So, I think it's a fantastic show. I think it has such verve and vivacity that I left because it's a mid-evening show, but I left after a long day of seeing other shows as well, of varying quality, invigorated in the extreme. It was fantastic.
Well, that was all we ever wanted, actually. I started the project, and for me, the best theatre that I have seen, musical or otherwise, is something that has absolutely written all over it how you're supposed to feel, and or has an objective with how they want the audience to feel about the show, and then just does everything they can to work towards it. And that goes, I saw Midsummer Night's Dream by Filter, which threw the rule book out the window and just wanted it to be funny. And I know the artistic director of that company, and I said, it felt as though you just wanted it to be funny. He said, that's all we wanted. And stuff like Shock-Headed Peter, which was supposed to be macabre and disturbing, which it did, and then stuff like The Woman in Black, which is just supposed to be scary, and that is. And so all we wanted was for people to have fun, and we did everything we could from that point to work towards that.
Massive success then.
That's right, and we feel like we've achieved that, and so that's exactly what we were hoping for.
Thank you so much for talking to me. It's been fascinating insight to hear how the show has been created, and the fact that it is an absolutely 18-carat gold show in that sense. You know, it absolutely does what it's supposed to do, and I can judge it only subjectively, but this subject went home delighted.
Oh,
so thank
fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and for this.
Well, I'd be very happy to hear more about it if it goes on to greater and better heights.
I'd love to talk about it.
So good luck to you for the future, and we'll speak again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Musical talk. Well, there we are, the incredibly talented Rebecca Humphries, talking about her show Prom Kween. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, it isn't just the case that you could have seen it last year, of course you could, but you can see it again this year. This year it's on at the Assembly George Square, and it's an hour-long show starting at 5 minutes past 9 o'clock every evening, and it runs to the 26th of August, with the exception of the 13th. Everyone's got to have a day off. If nothing else, I learned a couple of years ago, it's because everyone rushes in and has their costumes dry cleaned after having worn them day in, day out for a fortnight in some cases. Luckily, Edinburgh isn't always a hot city in the summer, otherwise you'd know about it. It's not called Old Reekie for nothing. Well, there we are. I hope that whetted your appetite for the Edinburgh Festival Fringe this summer. And perhaps, if you do go there, you might see me in an audience. If you do, come and say hello. Unless you've got a writ. And on that stupid note, I think it's time to say goodbye. And you know, it is. So here's me doing so. Goodbye. This episode edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2018. To find out more about the world of musical talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Musical Talk Thos.
As I say, there's a slight problem where I have to look at the gauge occasionally, so instead of making eye contact,
That's
I'm afraid there will be an
fine.
element of looking at my bald head. But as the sun's gone in, that shouldn't blind me,
No,
nothing else. Yes,
yeah,
right.
I think I'll be fine.
No flash burns or anything.